Hello, my name is Aiden Davert. Do we all remember our time in school? Of course we do. Many of us remember a lot of things. Some even remember how the school system operated, and even if we had opinions on that. Today I'll examine the American educational system and the many challenges it faces day to day that many people often ignore. So let's get started by looking at how the education system's structure is and why that matters. So, many schools use the Common Core curriculum for English and math. This is essentially just a national standard. These mainly focus on testable knowledge, though. These often lack practical skills and critical thinking skills. But this can create a skills gap. Students often graduate knowing test content, but not life or workplace skills. This can create a lot of issues outside the classroom. Students may lack sufficient skills for college because, simply put, a good GPA does not equal college readiness necessarily. They may also lack time management, critical thinking, the ability to be independent, and a variety of other things. Schools often use rote memorization and test prep over real-world skills. This is called teaching to the test. According to Diane Ravitch, a historian of education, former U.S. Secretary of Education, this often leaves students unprepared for real-world situations and to handle real-world problems. This can cause certain life skills to be insufficient. For example, financial literacy, civic knowledge, career skills, and time management. Why? Well, because standardized testing teaches to the test. It's all about evaluations and funding. It uses rote memorization. It's not very engaging for students at all, and it doesn't allow them to be curious about learning. Some impacts. Well, there's often a gap in what is learned and taught in schools versus the skills that is needed to succeed in life. Ravitch points out that many high school students leave or graduate without practical skills and critical thinking. That's not all. Schools also kill creativity sometimes through their monotonous routines and oftentimes bland content. According to Sir Ken Robinson, an internationally recognized educator and researcher on creativity, schools educate kids out of creativity simply through their monotonous routines, their rote memorization, and the lack of learning from mistakes. There's limited trial and error. Another major area researchers examine is educational inequality. Let's take a look at what the data says about that. According to Linda Darling-Hammond, a leading educational researcher in equity and policy, school funding is mainly based on property taxes. So this often means that lower income schools have inadequate resources compared to higher income schools. Poor schools often have bigger class sizes, outdated resources, and limited extracurriculars as well. Hammond points out that students from underfunded schools often graduate with major disadvantages, and this can lead to issues with college access and even potential job options. So in terms of inequality, for example, according to a report from the U.S. Century Foundation, U.S. schools are roughly $150 billion underfunded per year. From the Hechinger report in 2012, the richest 25% of districts got 15.6% more funding on average than the bottom 25% of school districts in terms of wealth. This funding gap has grown 44% in the last decade, so this has not gone away. But beyond funding, there's other differences many researchers also examine, such as school culture and learning environments that can also affect how students are engaged and the academic outcomes that they achieve. So, school environment. Lots of schools have overcrowded classrooms. This can create lots of stress for teachers and students because simply teachers are not able to give their students more individualized learning and more individualized teaching incorporated in their lessons simply because they don't have the time, on top of lesson planning and a variety of other things. Ravitch also notes that many schools are significantly underfunded and under-resourced in mental health. And that's a huge issue for many schools because Kids are often forming identities in this time of their lives. It's formative years. They're very important for these children, and many people go through these times feeling overwhelmed and insecure, and they could really use the support. There's also massive disengagement from students from content and teachers. This can also worsen learning because simply they just don't care. I mean, it's unfortunate. There have been some people that have proposed alternative educational models. Some of these are called project-based lessons, innovation labs, vocational tracks. These can allow kids to learn in non-traditional ways, so to speak. Now, according to Sir Ken Robinson, teaching to the test creates dry content that kills creativity and ultimately limits students in their problem-solving abilities. For example, the alternative uses test, created by psychologists at the University of Southern California in the 1960s, is a test where subjects are given an everyday object, paperclip, a brick, for example, and told come up with as many ideas as you can do or as many ideas as you can for uses for this object. Many kids, the ages from 7 to 12, are able to come up with the most responses, simply because their minds aren't restricted. Now, the caveat on this is that many of these are impractical and not very relevant to the situation, but that's not the point. The point is that these kids often experience less societal restriction that's often put in place by school systems. A great quote that shows this from Sir Ken Robinson's 2006 TED Talk, which was one of the most ever watched: "We don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it, or rather we get educated out of it." But why does this matter? Well, over-testing, limited creativity, and more, this can create a variety of things. Unprepared graduates, academic, personally, professionally, weak problem-solving abilities because of rote memorization. College readiness goes down. Many freshmen are often overwhelmed and have to drop or fail classes. Life effects, struggle with decision-making, anxiety from pressure and lack of control, harder transitions into adulthood, feeling disconnected from learning. This creates uneducated citizens. These don't just stay in the classroom. These often go into adulthood, and that's why reform matters. So there's a variety of solutions that have been proposed. Some including curriculum reform that include life skills rather than just academics. Specialized paths, letting students allowing them to explore the careers that they want to go down. This creates more motivation and creates more real-world readiness. Clearly, this issue is systemic, so we need to address it at the core. That's why reform, in my opinion, is very much needed. We need to add creativity to lessons. Robinson advocates for trial and error problem solving. It's okay to make mistakes. And then finally, we need to have equitable funding. We need to have funding not be based on property taxes, smaller class sizes, more mental health resources, and a variety of other things that can help students navigate a difficult time in their lives. But overall, the American education system fails too many students. Updates, equity, more support, these can help make for more competent adults in the real world. But if we do not act soon, this cycle of failure will just continue, simply because no one wants to address the unaddressed issues. Thank you.